This is our lesson on solving quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. Quadratic equations are typically written in standard form: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And the quadratic formula is here: negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. This is a formula that you'll use often enough that you may even already have it memorized. If not, you probably will in the future. Before we get into using the quadratic formula, I want to go back to factoring. When we factored before, I didn't have a solve for x. Well, this time, if we use this equation, 3x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals 0, I've added an equals 0. So we're actually going to be able to solve for x and figure out what x equals. So to refresh us on our factoring, 3x squared goes in the bottom left, the negative 2 goes in the top right, and we multiply those two together to get negative 6x squared for the top of our x. For the bottom, we've got our negative 5x. From there, remember, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 6x squared and add to negative 5x. Since they're multiplying to a negative, we know that one's going to be negative, one's going to be positive. Since they're adding to be a negative, we know that the larger number is going to have to be negative. Negative 6x times 1x is negative 6x squared. Negative 6x plus 1x is negative 5x. So we put those two in our rectangle, and we look at the first column here. Negative 6x and 3x squared. Both are divisible by 3, and both have an x, so we take out 3x on the bottom. 3x times x would give us 3x squared. 3x times negative 2 would give us negative 6x. And x times 1 would give us x. So on the outside, we have x minus 2 times 3x plus 1. Notice this time, though, it was equal to 0, so this is equal to 0. Now, for multiplying two numbers together and it equals 0, the only way you can get that is if one of those numbers is 0. 5 times 0 is 0. 0 times 7 is 0. One of the two numbers has to be 0. So one of these two parentheses must equal 0. So we take each parentheses, x minus 2 and 3x plus 1, and we set them both equal to 0. Okay? It could be either one of them. And then we solve each one for x. So we add 2, we get x equals 2. Here we subtract 1, we get 3x equals negative 1, and then we divide by 3, and x equals negative 1/3. Okay. So x equals positive 2 and negative 1/3. Let's look at that same problem using the quadratic formula. So again, 3x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals 0. First, let's start by figuring out what our a, b, and c values are. A is 3, b is negative 5, c is negative 2. You need to be careful here. Your equation won't always be written in this order. We could have the negative 5x over on this side. It's not going to change your a, b, or c values. Just remember, a goes with the x squared, b goes with the x, and c goes with the constant term, and you need to have everything on one side of the equation before you begin. I've written the quadratic formula again here. Now we just need to plug in our a, b, and c values. Notice I've used blue to represent the parts of the formula that do not change, and red to represent the numbers that we're plugging in. So we have negative, and then b. b is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b. negative 5 squared. Minus 4 times A is 3, times C is negative 2. All divided by 2 times A is 3. And notice I put everything in parentheses. All these numbers that I plugged in, I put them in parentheses to make sure that we do our multiplication correctly when we start solving this. So let's start at the beginning here. We have the negative of negative 5. That's positive 5. Plus or minus square root negative 5 squared is positive 25. Make sure if you punch that into your calculator, you use parentheses around the negative 5 before you square it. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, times negative 2 is positive 24, plus 24. On the bottom, 2 times 3 is 6. So we do our multiplication and our squaring and everything first. Now we have to combine what we have underneath that square root. 25 plus 24 is 49. Then we have to take the square root of 49. Hopefully you know that. That's 7. 5 plus or minus 7 divided by 6. Remember on the last problem we got 2 answers. Well, we're going to get 2 answers here too. That's where the plus and minus comes in. We're going to separate this into 2 equations now. 5 plus 7 divided by 6 and 5 minus 7 divided by 6. And we just solve each one of those. 5 plus 7 is 12 divided by 6 is 2. 5 minus 7 is negative 2 divided by 6 reduces to negative 1/3. So positive 2 and negative 1/3. If we look back at our answers from the previous slide, positive 2, negative 1/3. So the factoring and the quadratic formula both gave us the same answer.